Welcome, everybody, to another wonderful podcast with myself, Jo Rushton, and the beautiful Ishtar. We really would love to speak to you today about the universal rays. And I'm really excited about speaking about the universal rays because as much as being a practitioner of the rays means that I've gone through the teachings and as a practitioner bear the benefits of this beautiful healing modality, what I'd like to start with is a little bit of understanding, because this is something I haven't ever asked you, Ishtar. How did the universal rays come to be? What was, where were you? How did it come to life?
Okay. It's quite a bit of a funny story, really.
Excellent.
Because the masters asked me to teach about the universal rays. And I was doing workshops in Sydney, in Balmain in Sydney, and I was traveling, overseas and things. And they said, we want you to go out and teach about the universal rays. And I said to them, well, that's not going to work very well because I know nothing about the universal rays. I had never really heard of them. I didn't know anything about them. So I said no. And they said, well, you don't need to know anything about them because you're going to channel what we're going to tell you. And I went, oh, okay. But the thing was, I had no interest in them really. So it wasn't something I had an interest in. And so I set up a workshop in Sydney and I went and did the universal rays there. And it was a series, I can't remember how many, and I was doing a series in the tea house in Balmain, actually. And the first one I did, there was only a small group that came, and that was unusual because normally when I did things, I had a good group. And it was really because I wasn't that interested in the universal rays. But the funny thing was, when I started to channel them, it became very interesting to me because suddenly I was hearing what the masters were saying, and then I transcribed it. And I thought, wow, this is really interesting stuff. I hadn't really realized what it was. So, of course, the next session that I did, I had a full house because I had gotten interested. So therefore, other people, it was, once again, law of resonance, people came. So, yes, and then I took it to New York, and then I took it to London. I did a series in London, and then I did a series in Switzerland, in Geneva. So I went around and I gave channeled workshops on the universal rays for a year. And then when I came back to Australia after doing that tour, I thought, oh, well, that's great. I've done what they asked me to do. But then a few months later, they said, well, now we're going to create a healing program around the universal rays. And I went, oh, because once again, I had brought through the Master's Way and Open to Channel spiritual self-mastery courses at Mystery School. But I had no interest in doing a healing modality. I said, well, I'm not really a healer and I don't know how to put a healing modality together. And you can guess what they said to me. Well, you don't have to. We're going to tell you to do it. And I was very reluctant because I really didn't know what to do with, how to do it. So they said no. But so, as usual, I always said yes. Okay, we'll do it. So therefore, it got channeled through. But out of everything I've done, it's probably been the most challenging or the most difficult for me to bring through because it actually involved a lot of codes and all the cards and all of that. Well, that took me a good part of a year just to sit and do. And I really, probably longer than a year, I think it was 18 months all up because there were two levels to it. And I did the first level and which was the energy bodies and the chakra cards. And that just took so much from me because my thing is I'm not a code master. I don't do codes, so, which is also what I told the masters. And they said, well, don't worry, you're going to channel the codes, which is what happened. And then of course I had to do the cards, the universal ray cards, and that I can remember sitting, I had them set out on my dining room table and they sat there, the work sat there for months, and I would come and do a little bit, then I'd go away, and then I'd come back and channel a bit more. And I really struggled with it. It was a big struggle for me to bring it through, because there was so much in it, and the depth of it was so deep. And really trying to understand it, you know, it was hard.
How did the booklet part of the healing, and for those listening, we will go into a little bit more understanding about what the universal ray healing is. It's a healing, it's an energy healing therapy. But I'm really curious to learn how the actual booklet itself, did that come through over a period of time, or was that just...
Well, these are the cards, you know, these are some of the cards that we work with as a practitioner. Now, these had to come first, and I really struggled to understand these myself for quite a while, and the masters were telling me, you know, you've got to do this, and this is the energy and the consciousness. And then the booklet came second. So once I had, you know, challenged myself for probably about 6 months doing these, then I got the booklet had to be done. And so I was like, oh my goodness, you know, this is the booklet. And then, you know, I had to channel all the information about the cards, about the karma, about what had to be said, the divine decree, all of that had to be channeled. And that took another, I don't know how many months that took to do. So maybe another year, I think. I can't remember. That was because this was level 2. So I'd started doing level 1. We started teaching level 1, and then this was coming through as, you know, while I was teaching level 1. So yes.
So let's give our listeners a little bit more understanding about what the universal rays. It's a healing modality. Let's talk a little bit more about what the universal rays are and why it's so important, why the masters have called you to bring through this particular energy healing modality at this time in the collective.
I work with a council of 33 ascended masters, and I have for nearly 25 years now. And their focus has always been, as they've told me, was to really help humanity to come into self-mastery of their light, and also to resolve the unresolved karma that is held in the collective of humanity. It's been their major focus. And they've always said that, you know, what's happening is we're creating, because we are creator beings, we're constantly creating, and we're invariably creating consciousness that's not resolved. We have this beautiful consciousness we're given from source, and we're not that's not the word, we're filling it with shadow energy all the time, because we're not working or dealing with the consciousness we're creating. We're very reactive, constantly bringing up emotions, traumas, all of this energy, but we don't do anything with it. We just keep creating it, and it sits in our field, and it fills our field. And so the masters say that, you know, humanity's at a state with this now that, you know, we're going to, you know, combust, almost self-combust, if we don't actually start doing something about this karma. They've told me that, you know, all the waste that's on the planet, you know, all the plastic waste that's in the oceans, it's all over the earth, that's just a reflection of the karma that we're all holding. And it's, you know, and that really, and now, of course, we've got all the satellites around the planet and all the space junk around the planet. Well, it's just going out there. You know, the karma is affecting the whole universe, because we're talking about consciousness and energy, and it's affecting everything. And we're not doing anything about it. We just keep creating it, but we're not actually resolving it. We're not bringing it back to divine truth or light. So their focus is very much, the council I work with, that is their focus, is to help humanity to do something about this. Because until we do, we can't move forward. We're just going to get stuck in this energy, in this old karmic energy, this karmic consciousness that's limiting us all the time. So universal rays was brought to assist us to actually lift that karma. So that was the whole purpose of universal rays. And it was a healing modality that we've brought through from the masters to really work with a consciousness that can help us bring that karmic consciousness, that unresolved trauma that we hold within our beings, and help resolve it back to light, to bring it back to its divine truth, to bring it back to that beautiful energy that we were all given from the very moment we were expressed from source. And so that's what universal rays does. What are universal rays? Universal rays are not colored light. As you know, a lot of people work with colored light. It's nothing to do with colored light. Universal rays is actually consciousness that comes directly from source, that holds the highest potential. And it actually is their principles of creative energy that holds the highest potential for creation. So when we bring that energy, that consciousness through, it's a very high frequency consciousness. The masters call it plasma consciousness. It's plasma energy, which doesn't exist on the earth. It does exist in space, but not on the earth. The consciousness that comes from source travels on the plasma waves, and it comes through, and we teach practitioners how to channel that energy and share it with their clients to help them resolve karma.
So can we help our listeners understand how it is that every soul has its own soul ray chart of rays? So every soul that's incarnated, when they sit with their Ascension Council and decide, you know, what they're going to learn from and what consciousness they're going to be asked to meet in support of their growth and evolution, how do we explain a soul ray chart and the meaning for that for an individual in relation to the rays?
Good question, Joe, because the soul chart is something that came with this healing modality. So the masters wanted us to identify for the person the principles of creation that they're working with at this time, and they're being asked to master in this incarnation. So they set it out so that there is a soul ray, which is your mission, the whole purpose that your soul, why your soul wants to be here. There's a monadic ray, which is the group karma that is held within your being. There is the ego ray, which is often what we think and what our personality wants to do, but it may not be the same as what our soul has come to do. So we work mainly with those three. And then, of course, there are support rays. So we have an emotional ray, a mental ray, a physical ray, which supports us in manifesting the soul mission and aligning the ego with the soul mission, and also in helping to resolve the karma that is held that limits us from even connecting with our soul mission and still running with our ego mission. And then, of course, there is the ancestral ray, which is the energy that we're here to assist our ancestral lineage with, which is basically a service or a gift that we're giving to our ancestral. And this is something that we agree with our Ascension Council before we come in. So I think just to explain the Ascension Council, because not everyone understands that we all have Ascension Councils. We work with an Ascension Council, incarnation after incarnation, whether we're incarnating on the earth or any other place in the universe. And we meet with that. It's a council of 12 beings. Some of them are masters, ascended masters, not all. There could be archangelic beings on your Ascension Council. There could be ancestors on your Ascension Council. You know, those sort of guides that come to help you. So we work with those beings in between each incarnation, and then we work with them to make a choice about what we're going to focus on when we in this next incarnation, wherever we choose to incarnate, and what that focus is going to be for the evolution of our soul, because it's always about the evolution of the soul. It's always about the highest potential for the soul's growth. It's not about what the ego wants. It's about what the soul is here to manifest for itself so it may evolve. And when I talk about rays, once again, let's not confuse it with colored light or anything. What I'm talking about is consciousness. It's the principles of creation consciousness. So it's about what is the consciousness that the soul wants to focus on here to master. What is the ego focused on that is also trying to master that through the lower mind and through the lower vibrational physical world. So there's two places within that. Neither is right or wrong. What is the consciousness of karma, which is usually the trauma that is held that needs to be brought back to truth? And then what is the energy or the consciousness that is supporting you to do all of that? Because they're pretty big things that's sitting in your mind, in your emotional energy, in your physical energy, that's going to help you and support you to manifest those things in your life. So that's really what the soul chart's about. And it's a wonderful guide because it's not set in stone. It's got these, you know, we all evolve through our life, through our lifetime. So the soul chart won't, you can't just say, oh, well, you know, you're here and that's it, because we're all moving, we're all changing. So it'll have a consciousness. Where are you at with that consciousness? You know, are you resistance to it? Are you aligning with it? Are you struggling with this part of it? So we talk about those things when we do the soul chart to really assist the client to understand where they're at on their journey into self-mastery as a soul.
So when you're speaking to that, you're very much speaking to the fact that those streams of consciousness that hold energy and intention, when we're experiencing them here in the third dimension, we're experiencing them on a almost like a polarity of energy. So each of those principles,
and we can be sitting anywhere on that wave, you know, of consciousness. And we're in a, particularly on Earth, we're in a polarized field here on the Earth because it's a magnetized field. And so there's a lot of duality. So we can be at one end of the spectrum or the other, or in the middle somewhere. So on our journey, and we could jump ahead to the, you know, to the higher vibration of it. And then we could go back to the lower vibration on it, depending on what happens to us and what we experience. And how much we do to master that consciousness of creation.
So when somebody comes for a healing, I'd like to speak to, you know, what would bring somebody for a healing, and why they would, you know, be resonant to the universal rays, for example. But I also would like you to speak to how, not so much how we administer the healing, but what the energies are working with and what they work through. So the chakras and the energy bodies and the greater part of our being, the less manifested self, and that part of us that is actually receiving the healing, that's supporting the physical self.
Good question, Joe, because when the client's on the table, the practitioner, we train the practitioner to spend a good 15 to 20 minutes actually just making the physical body and all the physical dimensions comfortable. So we bring in a lot of prana and we work on the chakras, you know, but we work on making just helping the body to relax so it can receive. Why do we do that? Because the body is very used to receiving prana because it receives prana all the time. So, you know, we bring in the prana just to do that, to bring in a relaxed energy, an opened energy for the client. Because when we bring in the rays are a very strong plasmic light. I mean, when you bring in pure light into any of the physical consciousness, the body can often go into reaction because it's very strong. When we're bringing in universal rays, which is plasmic light, it's even stronger. So if you just brought the rays in without any preparation for the physical body, you would most probably find the body would not receive them, it would close up, it would shut down. So
Yeah.
they just bounce off the body, off the energy of the body. We actually get the body using sound and using prana, we get the body ready to receive. So there isn't that response or that reaction that would close the person off to do that. When we work through the 12 energy bodies always, which is the auric field, makes up our whole, human auric field. Because the human auric field is composed of 12 energetic bodies. And so we work through those bodies. And then we bring the rays in. Now, the practitioner is taught to channel the rays. And interestingly enough, at this time, the ascended masters, there are 13 ascended masters that oversaw this work, and they are the guardians or the gatekeepers of the rays for humanity at this time, until humanity's at a level where they don't need that. They can access it directly themselves. So at the moment, we bring through with the help of the masters. But we're not channeling the masters, they're the gatekeepers. We're channeling the consciousness, but they're the gatekeepers of that consciousness. Yeah. Excuse me.
And so from there, I mean, I've been, on the receiving end of many rays as you have, and they are incredibly powerful. I could certainly speak to what I've experienced and the shifts that have occurred for me, literally at the level of reality, at the level of the physical reality that we're experiencing. And I think that's really important to convey, that whilst we're working with the subtle energy bodies of a being, what we're offering is such a shift in the consciousness that being holds, is that it creates a complete shift in their reality, in their perspective,
Yes.
a shift in their perception, creating a shift in their reality. So could you speak a little bit more to how, how that works?
Well, as I said before, the rays themselves are the highest, higher potential for creation energy. They're the principles of, how to create and manifest in this universe with the higher potential. And when you bring them in, you channel them through, and they then meet with unresolved or traumatic consciousness, karma that you're holding within your being. The higher potential rays with their frequency meet that energy and help that energy to resolve. And it's not clearing it away, because that's not going to help you. It's actually bringing that energy into alignment with divine truth, with a higher potential, no longer letting that old karmic consciousness sit in its lower vibration, but lifting that lower vibration into a higher consciousness of potential. And so this is why the client often has huge transformations, because their perspective changes, because suddenly their consciousness is being shifted.
Yeah. And when we come for a healing, we work with 3 cards. So it's an initiation.
Yes.
That the soul is, the being is asking, being asked to move through an initiation of consciousness based on what's held within the cards. How would you explain that to?
Well, the cards that the practitioner works with is a system that's been given based on the consciousness of the rays, and the client chooses from their own intuition those 3 cards. The practitioner doesn't choose it, the client chooses those 3 cards. And those cards will tell your client the journey they're on at this time, the journey of consciousness and the journey of self-mastery that they're working with. And it will show them quite clearly the karma that they're also working with, that's holding them in limitation, that's binding them in some way. So every healing requires 3 sessions, 3 processes, we call it. It's because it takes that long to work through that journey. So we usually do them 2 weeks apart, and to give time for integration, and also for further healing after a session. And we work with those 3 cards, one per session, so that we can work on that consciousness. And when we work with the cards, I mean, it's so amazing, the synchronicity of it, because we'll do a soul chart first. We always do a soul chart to see what the client's journey is and what it's chosen for this life. And always, almost without fail, when those 3 cards are picked by the client, you're guaranteed that one of them will be the soul card, the soul ray, the consciousness of the soul, why the soul's here. Often there will be a karmic card, the karma that they're holding, and usually one of the support cards, or you might get the ego, but always the soul ray will come up, in those healings. It's such amazing synchronicity. It always happens. And I have taught this work all around the world. It's taught in 3 languages, English, French, and Russian. So, and this always happens. And it's just, I always just am amazed that this happens. It happens all the time. So those cards then are a guide for what the practitioner is going to work through, so they tell you what the story is. What is this consciousness that the client needs to work with? And of course, we discuss that with them.
So the universal rays, we're working through all levels of being, at the physical, the mental, the emotional, and the spiritual.
Right.
So essentially, anybody wondering whether or not a universal ray could work on a physical problem with the body, the answer would be yes.
Yes, wherever there's karma, it's held.
Yes. So, and that's a really great point, actually. I'd love you just to speak to that just for a moment, because it's also understanding that wherever that karma is held is where we're going to experience it. And sometimes the karma is held within the physical body, and therefore we feel it at a very, physical level, whether that's pain or restriction or some sort of dis-ease at that physical level, or it could be held in the emotional body.
Yes.
And we meet that unresolved karma at a very emotional level and very reactive level, or it could be held mentally. So, I think, could you just speak to just why it's so important for us to realize that in a healing like this, whilst the pain might be in the physical body, the karma may sit through the physical as well as other bodies as well.
That's right. Yeah. Because if the pains come into the physical body, then the karma could be held out, it's moved through some of the energy bodies. Remember, we said earlier, 12 energy bodies, auric fields. So that old karma that's creating limitation has moved through those energy bodies. So firstly, this is one of the wonderful reasons of doing universal race healing, is because then you resolve that karma before it comes into the physical, because we do prefer to resolve it before it hits the physical, because, as you know, we can certainly work with that in the physical, but once that heavy energies come into the physical, then it's very difficult to shift. If it's been there for quite a while. And while we can lift consciousness from the physical, once the cells and that have deteriorated because of it, then, you will need other support as well, because the physical is density. So it's moved into dense energy. So I'm not saying it doesn't lift from the physical. It can, but it just depends on what it is, So I'm not going to promise that you have a universal race healing and your cancer will be lifted, because I won't do that, because it may not. The consciousness that created it in the first place certainly could be lifted. But the disease, once it's moved into the cells and it's gone into dense physical matter, then it may not be able to be. But I'm not saying it won't be, I'm just saying it may not be able to be. So understanding that. So this is why we prefer to, it's wonderful to do this work, because let's shift that karma in the other bodies before it hits the physical is a very good thing to do. So it's not being played out in the physical world. Unfortunately, we need to understand that as light beings, whatever we create in terms of unresolved consciousness, we carry around with us for a long time. So you could be carrying it around for 500 lifetimes or incarnations or longer. And so if it's sitting with you for that long, it's probably going to be getting close to being in the physical, if not already in the physical, and playing out in the physical. You know, you can see when there's emotional karma, or even in the mental with thoughts and beliefs, that we invariably will play it out in our reality in some way. But you do not want to play it out in the physical body if you can help it. You know, I mean, that's an ideal scenario, so that we shift that karma before we start playing it in our physical density, in the body itself, in our cells. And we prefer not to be doing that. So yeah, that's
and one of the other things that you shared as well, we were speaking earlier, it's really quite unique from an energy therapy perspective, because practitioners that are giving the healing, because it's a channeled healing that they are giving, that they are also receiving. And that's not always the case with a lot of energy healing modalities. They can be the transmitter of an energy, but not necessarily be receiving the benefits of the higher frequency and the higher consciousness that they're channeling from the rays.
And
so could you share?
I mean, this is the gift of universal rays for any practitioner. And we have seen this time and time again, haven't we, Joe, with practitioners who use this work regularly. They have huge transformative shifts. It's just amazing, because they're doing this work, they're offering it to others in loving service, they're channeling it through their field. Now, when you're channeling, you're moving it through all 12 energy bodies. You're not just moving it through one energy body, or, you know, whatever. To channel the rays, you have to bring it through all 12 of your energy bodies. They have to move through that stream. They can't, it's not just going to come through the physical or through the chakra pillar. It's not doing that. It's going through all 12 energy bodies, because that's what channeling is. So you're receiving it through the stream, through your 12 energy bodies, and then you're sharing it. So the universal rays have got to move through you, through all channel streams. So they're going to come through, and they're going to affect you, because they're very powerful. And we see that they do. It's just huge transformation. When I see practitioners who have been doing this work for a year or more, I see huge shifts in them, you know, just from doing the work. If they're regularly offering this work to others, we see huge shifts in them, because while they're sharing, they're receiving so much for themselves. And it's a beautiful gift.
It really is. I can speak to that. It's I remember for myself receiving an email from you, and it was you know, promoting level 1 of universal rays when you were still teaching it way back. And I think it was like the 3rd email, and I had no idea what the universal rays were about. Anyway, I just went, I need to do that. And I booked in, no clue what I was booking in for. And it's so, you know, of course, all in divine timing, as it always is. But I had always been interested and looking for an experience that I could have with working with energy in some kind of an energy healing modality. And for some reason, you know, Reiki never spoke to me, and so many of the other energy, you know, healings just didn't speak to me. And then when I came and did universal rays, it was just like, oh my gosh, this is it. And for me, I just want to share one of the main reasons for this is because, and maybe it's it supported me as a coach, as you know, as what I do as well. And it supported me because you're not just getting someone on a table and just offering them prana or some Reiki. You're actually able to talk to them about the consciousness that they're here learning from,
Yes.
and learning to come into more awareness of, but to learn how to work with. And that for me, it offered so much, such a completeness of being able to not just work with somebody on the subtle energy level, but also be able to speak to them about a consciousness that they could come into an understanding of, and start to be able to relate to it in their life. And that for me, I mean, I remember when I had my Ray reading, and it was just like, oh my God, that's why I do what I do. Oh,
Yes.
oh, that's why I attract that. Oh, that's why I keep doing this. Oh, you know, and it was all of these huge ahas, because it was an understanding for the consciousness that's been governing me all of my life.
That's right.
And when you can come into a conscious awareness for that energy, then you can start creating and co-creating more consciously in your life. And that was a game changer for me. And to be able to support clients into that higher understanding of what's available to them as a potential, that was, yeah. So thank you for bringing through such a powerful
It
healing
was challenging, but it is such a powerful and rewarding modality. You know, it really is. And you know, I always laugh because, you know, when you really listen to the masters, you understand the wisdom that they're bringing to you, even when your mind is telling you something different, you know. So yeah.
Yes. So I guess I'd like to end by, you know, if this has inspired anybody out there. You know, I was somebody who wasn't a practitioner of any energy modality, and so you really don't need to be.
No.
Because you are, you know, you are taught everything that you need to know, and it is very different to learn how to be a channel of that energy, rather than just a, you know, a transmitter, so to speak, of prana, or some of the other, you know, energy modalities that are out there. So, you know, if you are somebody who has you know, felt inspired by what we've spoken about, and you'd like to learn more about the universal rays, where would they go, Ishtar?
Well, they need to go to the website, because that's the best place to go, which is www.universalrayshealing.com. There you go. You go there.
Yeah.
And
we'll put it in the link.
We'll put in the link, but you know, we've got it. You train online now, so the whole online component. And so you can learn all the theory and the understanding of it, because there's a whole understanding of the energy, and you learn so much in that. But then, you know, if you want to go on and do the healing and learn to be a practitioner, then you work with a teacher, and you learn that live with a teacher, so that you can get bodies on the table and actually learn how to put your hands on and what you do, and the teacher will guide you. So the two components: online with me with videos, and then live with the teacher, hands-on on a table, and you can go through and do that. And of course the teacher then regularly holds reviews for you. So, you know, it's yeah, it's a great experience. Great tool.
It really is. It's for anybody who works within the healing arts. I think it's definitely something that is worth looking into. So thank you for taking the time to explore and explain a little bit more about how you brought it through, and the anguish that you would have experienced at times of bringing it through. But how it has benefited hundreds. I mean, the practitioners that we have out there around the world, and the number of people that they have supported and helped with this work, you know, it's a beautiful rippling effect that's reaching thousands and thousands of people around the world. So if you feel called to either an experience of the rays, or you feel called to understanding more about the practitioner course, then please just follow the link that we give to you in the bio here.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Ishtar.
Thank you.
And thank you, everybody, for
Thank you,
listening.
everybody. Thank you. Blessings.